and welcome to this session of Pilates with me, Tanya Ross. We are going to take you through a Pilates Kebab. So we're going to work most areas through our core through this. So we're going to work a little bit of kind of upper and lower abs, sides, back, and we're going to connect in with the legs and the arms as well. So we have a lot to get through, but yeah, hopefully it's going to feel like an appropriate level of challenge. You will have some options on the way through. So I hope you enjoy this session, and if you do, don't forget to leave us a like, and some comments would be good as well. So yeah, let's get you set up on your mat and let's get started. So bring yourself into a seated position. We're going to roll you down bone by bone, bring it onto the floor, and I want you to allow those legs to lengthen out. Take the arms overhead, take it into a full body stretch. Reach the arms up long, reach the legs long, let the rib cage lift off the floor. And then slowly bring the arms back down. And you can leave the legs where they are for now, just letting them stretch out. Take a deep breath in. And as you breathe out, try to let go of the neck and shoulders a little bit more to let them sink into the floor. On the next breath in, your focus for the out breath is diverted towards the ribs, the pelvis, the arms, letting them sink heavier into the floor. On another breath, the focus is drawing into the hips and into the legs. And on the out breath, trying to let them sink a little heavier into the floor. Getting a sense on the next breath, full breath in, a total body release on the out breath, trying to let everything go. So almost forming like a baseline of where you're going to start from, as relaxed as you can make yourself for now. Then slowly start to slide one leg in and then the other. We're going to set you up for shoulder bridge. So bring the heels underneath your knees, about hip distance apart. If the toes prefer a tiny little turn out, they can take that. And you can leave the arms relaxed wherever they are. In breath, and as you breathe out, start that pelvic tilt, starting to feel that movement rolling up through the spine, lengthening through the knees, and then that in-breath to roll back down again. So this idea, this concept of keeping the pelvic floor pulling up inside to keep that active, I want you to keep your focus within that movement, almost closing everything off down below and pulling up inside to lengthen from your tail essentially all the way up to the top of your head. Take one more roll, noticing even at the highest part of the movement, are you still pulling everything in, and then slowly widen the pelvis as you roll it back down, starting to bring in that sense of widening. We're going to take two more, and I want your focus to be on pulling those two hip bones in the front of the body apart. So as you roll and tilt the pelvis, imagine that you're trying to get that sensation of pulling those two hip bones apart so that it pulls everything in and tightens it. Same on the way down, can you keep your focus on to pulling those hip bones apart? So taking one last one whenever you're ready. Again, slowly lengthening the spine, thinking about that widening, and again, and slowly rolling back down. So with the back into that neutral space, you can take the pelvic tilts if you feel you need to find your middle ground where the pelvis should set, and then allowing one leg to float up and then the other. So we're not taking it full beginners, which would be just one leg at a time. We're going to take it in single leg, but with both legs from tabletop. So neck nice and long, arms relaxed. Again, trying to keep that sense of release. In breath, and as you breathe out, reach one leg away, maybe aiming to the top rung of a ladder if you need to make it softer. And then as you alternate to the other side, out breath to go out, in breath to come back in, you can choose which rung of the ladder you aim for. So as you're reaching it away, I want you to keep that twofold idea. The pelvic floor is pulling up inside. Maybe play with that for a couple of movements. And then take it into that widening sensation, as if you're trying to pull both those hip bones apart. And it's getting a sense of which one of each of those makes you feel like you're more secure in place, so that the back isn't arching away from the floor and those abdominals are not doming into the air. So we're going to keep going. We're going to aim. We might might as well just do 10 each side. So that each time you feel that maybe there's a temptation that your weight's going to tip onto an arch in through the pelvis, that maybe you try either the pull up inside or you try that widening effect on the pelvis. Which one works for you? And the hope is that you should only need one of them, but they both relate to each other. So if you need a little bit of both, that's okay. And when you get to the end of those 10, you can give the knees a hug in. Let the legs soften down. So we're then going to take it into a tick-tock. So we're going to let those legs draw back up again, but legs together in tabletop. So still setting that same base plate up with the pelvis. In breath, and as you breathe out, you're going to take your right leg open to the side. So it's going to go as far out to the side as you can, pressing the knee to the floor. The left knee is reaching up to the ceiling, but your back position doesn't change. And then slowly draw back in. That tick-tock, it knocks the other leg out to the side, pressing the knee down, and then that scoop in to help draw back in from your center. So keeping that notion that when you're ready to pull a leg back in, maybe it's the pull up inside that helps you reconnect to the core. So you can try that once on each leg. In breath to go out, out breath to come back in. And when you're coming back in, that tightening sensation of maybe separating those hip bones, trying to widen them as far as you can, will give you, again, that same sense of trying to hold in place. So we're going for 5 to each side. If you do need to go softer, you can always have the feet on the floor and just let the knee tilt out to the side. So when you get to the end of that 5th one, again, you can soften the legs in just for a little hug. So soften it down through the pelvis. And then we're going to take you onto your side. So lengthen the body out. You can bring the feet to the floor, bring it onto your side. And set up that long straight body line. So arms straight underneath if you can. If you can't, you can always bend it, but try to go for the straight line. Legs straight, hip line fully open. And I want you to get that sense that you're not sunken through the rib cage or the waistline. You're trying to keep everything lengthening. So the pull up inside sometimes lends itself better to when you're trying to really lengthen. But again, you could still go with the idea of trying to widen the hip bones. So that feeling should increase that space underneath you. So you're holding the top leg lifted and you're going to take that bottom leg lifted as well. So we're trying to hold both legs up, but if that feels like that's too much, then you can always lower the bottom leg if it doesn't feel right, especially on your back. So when you're ready, if you're steady, we're going to take a walking step with the top leg. It could be about the size of your baby toe, or it could be bigger, but you're trying to stop the body from kind of rocking and rolling. So wherever the top hand wants to go, wherever it feels like it's not kind of hindering your movement. So it's really, really small. And your body will want to counter. So whenever you're moving, if you're going too fast or too far, your body's going to start to roll. So you're trying to keep everything really steady and the bottom leg stays still. So the bottom leg stays in that center line and the top leg moves around it. So it's focusing on the balance, trying to keep that underside waist lifted. So the only thing that's moving is the top leg. So you're taking it through 10 steps, forward and backward. And you should feel this in the top of the hip. Yeah, so keeping that lift on the underside waist. So again, really small. You decide where you feel that you can challenge the length of the leg, challenge the pull up, but still hold everything nice and stable. Now when you get to the end of the 10th one from there, we're going to take you into a lift of the top leg for 5. So you're held in position still again, so we're lifting it up. So your knee and toes are pointing forwards. You will meet your natural hip end range of movement. Everybody's different. But if you can lift that leg right up to the ceiling, you're probably sinking back. You're trying to keep those hips fully open. So it should feel like it's coming right up into the side of the hip. So just 5 movements, try not to let those ribs collapse when the leg gets to the top. Once you've done 5, then you can soften the knees in. Yeah. And if you feel that, you can give it a bit of a whack if it feels like it needs it, depending how much that's tapped into the hip. So we're going to bring you onto your tummy next. So we're going to bring you into your swimming legs. So you can bring it onto the tummy and just rest your head onto your hands. So again, even though we're thinking of keeping it at that beginner level as such, the focus is nonetheless any different. You're trying to get that little tilt of the pelvis so the tailbone is long, the pubic bone presses a little bit more into the floor, the ribs are lifting slightly. Same pull up inside or that same tightening. And in this position, when you try to pull your hip bones apart, you should feel your skin trying to pull away from the floor. So you can rest your head onto your hands. Legs are really long and straight, so there's a little bit of tension when you go to lift. In breath to prepare, out breath to lift, in breath to lower. And again, out breath to lift, in breath to lower. And I want you to notice whether the skin on the tummy doesn't feel like it touches the floor more than when you first started. So you're still trying to pull those two hip bones wide apart. And your glutes should now be working. So they're going to try to tilt your pelvis. So with that pull of the two hip bones apart, it should feel like you're trying to keep that skin pulling away from the floor underneath you. Okay. Once you've done 5 each side, we're going to change you into diamond press. Let the legs go loose, bring the toes together, let the heels fall apart. So your glutes shouldn't be used at all. Arms stay on the floor. On the in breath, you're lifting through the chest. Arms are doing nothing. Out breath to lower. Just taking it through 5. Again, in breath to lift. Keep the ribs, that sensation of them trying to draw up from the floor. So you're lifting up from the mid back as opposed to just from your neck. So 5 lifts. When you get to the end of that 5th one, I want you to notice whether your heels have come together. Is your glutes, are they squeezing so that your heels have come together, or can you keep them relaxed so it's no butt action at all? So then from there, we're going to bring the legs about hip distance apart. So this time you're allowed to have some connection down into the legs. Keep the hands connected to the hip, in breath to lift, out breath to lower. And I want you to get a sense whenever you're lifting, the neck is still long, you're diamond press with that lift, but do you feel that you're still pulling the skin tight between those two hip bones? So when you're lifting, you're still trying to get that feeling of pulling those hips wide apart. Now when you've done the 5 through there, you can bring the hands in underneath the shoulders, in breath, and as you breathe out, push it back to child's pose. Just let everything lengthen, arms reaching nice and long. Take an in breath, and as you breathe out, we're going to set you up onto your other side. So you can draw it up into box, whether you need to turn around or what you need to do, but find your way onto your other side. And once you get there, again, hip line open, arm long and straight, ribs are lifted, waistline lifted, top hand wherever it feels it gets more comfortable. When you're ready, float the top leg, hip height. Can you bring the bottom leg up? If that is painful, you can leave it down there, but otherwise keep that space in there between the ribs. So you'll now know whether you're on your wobbly side or not, potentially. So you're taking those 10 movements again, top leg moving forwards and backwards. No counter movements going on. So you're trying not to let the bottom leg move forward or backwards. You're trying not to let the top shoulder kind of move forward and backwards as well. That's another counter movement that will happen, or will want to happen. So just keep on choosing the size of the movement that feels like it's a challenge to keeping those two hip bones pulled wide apart, as well as that sense of being lifted and lengthened through the spine. Lifted through the ribs, so that you can feel that that gap is there underneath you. Now when you get to the end of your 10 steps, then we're going to take that top leg up to the ceiling. When it gets up there, just notice is the space still there underneath the ribs. So it's trying to keep that long lift, keep pressing back into the heel as you lift, still keeping that widening going on in the tummy. And when you get to 5, we're going to bring you onto your tummy. Hands underneath the shoulders. Again, it's just that little mini half press up. We're going to bring you up, so in breath. And then as you breathe out, that push in through the floor. So we're going to take you in through your box press ups, but we're still aiming to try to keep the elbows narrow. So set it up, wide fingers, arms long, shoulders hug down into the socket as if you're externally rotating those upper arms. And notice whether the spine feels long and in neutral, or are you in that kind of arched back or cow position, or are you a little bit more lifted into your sad cat. So find that middle ground between the two. And then once you're ready, so you choose how low you go. Easiest is letting the nose go between the hands, choose the size. And more challenging is trying to take the body forwards. We're only doing 5, in breath to go down, out breath to come back up. So thinking about keeping those elbows squeezing together and that widening across the 2 hip bones, especially when you push the mat away on your out breath. So thinking through that sensation, pulling them wide apart. Once you've done your 5, take your child's pose, let the body lengthen, and take 3 deep breaths. Again, letting, on each out breath, letting the body kind of sink a little deeper. Letting go of any tension that may have been built up through that round. And when you get to the end of your 3rd in-breath, just walk the hands back and bring it up into kneeling. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, leave me a like, give me a thumbs up down below, and maybe leave me a comment. Would love to know how you get on whenever you've gone through this session, feeling that connection and maybe potentially grow on the way through the session. And if you haven't already, subscribe. That way when we add a video, you'll be notified and you can join us again on your mat. So thanks for joining me, and yeah, keep it up, keep going. Hope to see you again soon on your mat.